My name is Jim, and the story I'm about to tell happened almost 40 years ago. I was just a teenager then, working as a fire lookout in a remote tower somewhere deep in the Pacific Northwest. The job sounded simple: watch for signs of fire, report unusual activity, keep the radios working, and most of all, stay alert. What no one mentioned was the silence, the long, lonely hours, the way the woods would seem to stare back at you when you looked too long. The isolation out there was intense. In a pre-internet, pre-smartphone world, it was just you, the trees, and the wind. Every morning, sunlight would spill through the tower windows like clockwork. I'd get out of my creaky bed, make coffee on the little stove, and climb to the observation deck. That coffee was the only warm thing for miles. The forest stretched out in all directions, a vast green sea that seemed endless. I'd scan it with my binoculars, watching for smoke or anything out of place. Each morning and evening, I'd check in on the radio. I'd say, "Tower 6, all clear," and my supervisor Dave would respond from base. It was routine, and honestly, kind of peaceful. Until one morning, when everything changed. I just finished my first sweep when I saw them. Figures. Standing still at the edge of the tree line, far beyond any known hiking path. They didn't move, just stood there, like they were watching the tower, watching me. I froze. My hands tightened around the binoculars. I wasn't trained for this. I grabbed the radio mic, trying to sound calm. "Base, this is Tower 6. Do you copy?" Dave answered. "Go ahead, Tower 6. I'm seeing something strange. Figures. Human-shaped. Not moving. At the edge of the woods." There was a pause, then Dave replied, "You're probably just seeing shadows. Wildlife, maybe. Don't let the isolation mess with your head. Over." But they were still there. I looked again. Tall, dark silhouettes. Human, but off. "Dave, I'm sure these aren't animals." His tone changed slightly. "Jim, it's your first week. You're not used to the woods yet. Things look strange when you're alone out there. Just keep your focus on spotting fires. Over." I set the mic down, staring out the window in silence. I couldn't shake the feeling that what I had seen was real. I wrote the time and direction of the sighting in my logbook. Then I tried to distract myself. I cleaned the tower, organized the pantry, swept the floors, anything to keep my mind off those figures. But every time I passed a window, my eyes were drawn to the tree line. By the afternoon, they were gone. I should have felt relief, but I didn't. They didn't disappear. They moved. That night, I locked everything. Every latch, every window. For the first time, it didn't feel like routine. It felt necessary. I lay in bed listening to the tower creak in the wind. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow seemed to shift. When morning came, I got up, made my coffee, and climbed to the observation deck. I almost didn't want to look, but I had to. I raised the binoculars and scanned the clearing where I had seen them before. There they were. Again. But this time, they were closer. Only 200 yards away now. Like they were moving toward me. The next morning, I didn't want to believe it was happening again. But there they were, closer now, standing in a small clearing, no more than 200 yards from the tower. I focused my binoculars and could see them in more detail this time. They looked humanoid, but their clothing, or what I assumed was clothing, was dark and tattered. Their features were impossible to pin down. Even in the morning light, they looked like they were wrapped in shadow, constantly shifting like TV static. My eyes couldn't seem to lock onto them. It was as if they resisted being seen clearly. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves, and reached for the radio. Tower 4, this is Tower 6. Do you copy? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. A moment later, a familiar voice replied. This is Tower 4. I read you, Tower 6. What's going on? Have you seen anything unusual out there lately? Specifically, shadowy figures at the edge of the forest? There was a pause before Tower 4 answered. Shadowy figures? Do you mean like animals? I've seen some deer, a bear maybe, but no figures. Why? What are you seeing? I exhaled slowly. I've seen them 2 days in a row now. They're not animals. They're humanoid. They're getting closer to the tower, just standing there, watching. There was another pause, this one longer. Are you sure you're not just seeing things? He asked. It can get pretty lonely out there. Your mind can start messing with you. I clenched the microphone tightly. I thought the same thing at first, but they're there. They don't look like people, not exactly, but they're not animals. They're covered in some kind of dark, ragged clothing, and their features are all blurry, like static, like they're not fully part of this world. When Tower 4 finally spoke again, there was a shift in his tone, something cautious. Well, I haven't seen anything like that, but I'll keep an eye out. Just stay safe, okay? Maybe keep the door locked. I will, I replied, setting the microphone down. But his words didn't make me feel any safer. In fact, they only made me feel more alone. Whatever I was seeing it alone. The next morning came with an unshakable sense of dread. I brewed my coffee, climbed the observation deck, and stared into the forest. This time, I started by scanning the clearing where I had last seen them. It was empty. Relief hit me, briefly. Then I realized I hadn't checked the surrounding areas, closer to the tower. I slowly panned across the trees, my hands shaking as I adjusted the binoculars, and there they were, again. Only 100 yards away now, near one of the footpaths leading up toward the tower, half hidden by the trees but unmistakably closer. My heart pounded. I grabbed the radio. Tower 4, this is Tower 6. Do you copy? Tower 4, this is Tower 6. What's the situation? Came the reply. They've moved again. Closer. Just 100 yards away, near one of the footpaths. Are you sure it's not hikers or hunters? He asked, more serious now. I'm sure. These aren't people. Not any kind I recognize. It feels deliberate, like they're coming toward the tower. All right, he said. Keep your eyes peeled. Stay inside after dark. Lock up. And if you've got a weapon, keep it close. I will, I said. I set the microphone down and looked out at the forest again. The figures were still there, drifting almost imperceptibly between the trees. I couldn't just sit there anymore, watching them, wondering what was happening. I pulled out the topographic map from the drawer, a detailed layout of the forest with trails, water sources, and terrain elevations. I grabbed a red marker and began placing X's where I had seen the figures on each day. When I stepped back, I expected a pattern, a trail, a direction, anything. But there was nothing, just random points creeping steadily closer. That night, I decided I needed to know if anyone else was seeing what I was seeing. I tuned the radio to Tower 3, where Jessica worked. This is Jim from Tower 6. Have you ever witnessed anything strange out there? Shadowy figures, ones that get closer every night? There was a long silence before she replied. I've never seen anything like that. It sounds creepy. Are you sure it's not just the loneliness? Are you getting enough sleep? I gripped the radio tighter. I know what I saw. I'm not imagining this. Whatever they are, they're getting closer every night. Before she could respond, the radio went dead. No static, no distortion, just silence.
My heart dropped. I turned the frequency dial back and forth, gave the radio a few desperate smacks, but nothing. It was completely dead. The one connection I had to the outside world, gone. The isolation hit me like a brick wall. The feeling of being cut off was overwhelming. There was no way to warn anyone, no way to ask for help. I was alone. With them. Darkness crept over the forest, heavier than usual. The absence of the moon made everything feel darker, thicker, heavier. I sat in the observation room, staring down at the trees. They were there, closer than ever, at the base of the tower. A shiver ran up my spine. I was no longer watching them from a distance. They were here, right below me. I rushed to take stock of what I had. A flashlight with weak batteries, a basic fire extinguisher, and a flare gun with a single flare. That was it. No real weapons, nothing truly useful for defense. I moved quickly, pulling furniture to the door, chairs, shelves, whatever I could find. I barricaded myself in, then sat with the flare gun in hand, waiting, listening. Every creak of the tower, every groan in the wood, every gust of wind through the trees made me jump. I grabbed the binoculars and looked down again. They were still there, unmoving, watching. Not advancing, but not retreating either.
I sat there for what felt like hours, clutching the flare gun, staring down at the figures circling just beyond the reach of the tower's weak lights. They were close, too close, but never crossed the final boundary, just standing still, watching. My thoughts raced. What did they want? Why hadn't they moved? Were they waiting for something? Then came the sound. At first, I thought it was just the tower creaking again, but this noise was different, faint but rhythmic. A soft, scratching sound, coming from the base of the tower. It wasn't wind, it wasn't an animal brushing by. It was deliberate. They were trying to climb. My breath caught in my throat. I jumped to my feet, raising the flare gun with trembling hands. I didn't think, just aimed it upward and fired. The flare erupted from the barrel, cutting through the darkness like a red comet. For a moment, the entire forest was lit in an eerie crimson glow. The trees, the clearing, the shadows, they all looked painted in blood. And in that light, I saw the figures clearly for the first time. They weren't just standing, they were recoiling, like the light burned them. They retreated, slipping back into the shadows like smoke. The scratching stopped. The silence returned. But as the flare descended, its light flickering out, I noticed something else. Where it had landed, the dry leaves had caught fire. A small blaze had started near the edge of the clearing. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, rushed to the door, tore away the barricade, and flung it open. I didn't think about what could be waiting outside. I just ran down the stairs toward the fire. I pulled the pin on the extinguisher and doused the flames, the hiss and spray loud in the night. The fire died quickly, leaving only scorched leaves and a bitter chemical smell. I stood there panting, staring into the woods around me, expecting to see them. But they were gone. Not a trace, not a sound, nothing. That silence was somehow worse than the figures themselves. Why hadn't they attacked when I was vulnerable? Why retreat? Where had they gone? Clutching the now empty extinguisher, I backed toward the tower, every crunch of the leaves underfoot sounding deafening. I reached the stairs, climbed up, locked the door, and rebuilt my barricade. Then I sat there again, staring through the window, flare gun useless beside me. Hours passed. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just waited. And then, finally, the sun began to rise. Golden light broke through the trees, the sky shifted from black to pink, and just like that, the radio crackled back to life. "Tower 6, this is base, do you copy?"
I scrambled for the microphone. "I copy," I said, my voice raw. "You won't believe what happened here last night." "Slow down, Jim. Start from the beginning." I told them everything. The figures, the scratching, the flare, the fire. I told them how I had to extinguish it myself, how the radio had gone dead, how the figures were right at the base of my tower. "We're sending a rescue team," Base said. "Sit tight." Within hours, I heard the rumble of an approaching vehicle. Relief hit me hard. I watched from the deck as the team arrived, men in uniforms with radios and gear. They spread out, inspecting the tower and the surrounding area. When they reached me, they could see it on my face. I was shaken. "Are you okay?" one of them asked. "I've been better," I said, managing a weak smile. They found the scorch marks on the ground, the residue from the extinguisher, and most important, they found claw marks etched into the wooden supports at the base of the tower. Deep, deliberate gouges. One team member crouched beside them, inspecting the damage. "Could be raccoons or maybe a bear," he said. I stared at him in disbelief. "You think a raccoon fired a flare gun and started a fire?" Another team member chimed in, voice calm but patronizing. "You were isolated, Jim. The mind plays tricks. This job wears on people." I shook my head. "I know what I saw," I said. "These weren't animals. They were human-shaped, tall, dressed in black, ragged clothing. And they were getting closer, every single night." He looked at me with sympathy but didn't respond. They didn't believe me. They packed up the evidence, made some notes, and led me to the vehicle. As we drove away, I turned to look back. The tower was still there, shrinking into the distance, its silhouette swallowed into the trees. My stomach twisted. It was over, but not really, because I knew something had happened out there, and no one believed me. Years passed, but the memory never left. Not completely. I tried to move on, to chalk it up to stress, exhaustion, anything, but I couldn't shake it. Something was out there. Something real. Eventually, I had to know. I drove back one morning, years later. The forest was unchanged, vast, green, quiet. I parked at the tree line and began the old, familiar hike. My feet crunched over leaves and roots, memories flooding in with every step. When I reached the tower, I found it just as I had left it. Weathered, vines crawling up the supports, the wood faded and graying. I climbed the stairs, the same creaks, the same feel of the railing under my hand. The door was closed, paint peeling, the handle tarnished with age. I turned it slowly and stepped inside. Dust covered everything. The table, the chairs, the old radio. A thick silence blanketed the room. But it was all there, just like I remembered. I walked to the window, lifted the old binoculars, and scanned the forest. It was calm. The sea of trees below swayed gently in the breeze. Nothing moved. No sign of the figures. I scanned the old clearing, the tree line, every shadow. And then, just in the corner of my eye, I saw something. A flicker of movement. Dark shapes, low to the ground, far in the distance. I turned the binoculars sharply, heart pounding, but nothing. Just trees, shadows, leaves. Did I imagine it? Was it just my memory, playing tricks on me again? I lowered the binoculars, took one last look at the woods, and stepped away. I didn't need to see them again to know they were real. Some things stay with you, whether people believe you or not. I descended the tower one last time, walked back to my car, and drove away. As the road carried me farther from the forest, the tower disappeared from my rearview mirror. But the feeling didn't. Whatever I encountered out there, it wasn't imagination. It wasn't loneliness. It was real. And I'm not sure it's gone.